My father died 19 years ago, and it took me 23 hours to get from Bangkok to Miami. I was in a jungle eco camp about 200 miles south of Bangkok, having breakfast with our small group, and the group leader tapped me on the shoulder and pulled me away into his little tent office. And I walked in, I saw the phone cradle. The cradle was off the phone, and he indicated that it was for me. And I was sort of shocked. I mean, how did anybody find me in this little place in the middle of the jungle? And I realized that I had told my brother roughly what my itinerary was and what the name of the international tour group that I was on. So with sort of a growing sense of panic, I picked up the phone, and terrible connection, barely could hear him, but I recognized it was my brother's voice, and I sort of picked up that something to do with Dad, and you need to get home. So about 2 hours later, I finally was waiting for the plane to board in Bangkok, and I got my mother on the phone, and she indicated that Dad had a massive coronary. He had collapsed in front of the townhouse, his townhouse community, and was in the hospital in a coma. So I had plenty of time to reflect on all of that on the long flight to Miami, and thought about the last time we had spoken, and I was in LA finishing up a business conference, and we spoke. He was proud of the way things were going in my business and how things in general were going on in my life. He knew that I had separated from Ellen, and we talked about when I got back from the trip, maybe we would get back together again. And I said I hoped we would. And with that, we ended the call and professed our love for each other, and that was it. The next day, my cab pulled up in front of the hospital. It was still very early morning. The night shift had just gone off duty. I fumbled with my ID, and I was pointed to the direction of a bank of elevators and a room number. And I found myself standing in front of the ICU unit inside a curtain, watching my father lying in his blue surgical gown, the sound of a air compressor whirring, and the beeping of the EKG going through its cycle. I only realized later that those machines can keep some basic bodily functions working even as the organs are shutting down. I guess the staff had known about the situation and wanted to keep him alive until his eldest son arrived. So I moved in closer, and I held his cold hand, and I began to talk softly, believing that he was hearing me because I noticed some slight changes in his facial expressions. And, I talked about the good times we had, the vacations we took, the holidays we had spent together, the time he had bailed me out for a criminal trespass infraction and promised that he wouldn't tell Mom about it. And And then I just stood there and cried and kissed him on the forehead and left. And that evening, I got a call from his sister who was living in the area, and she said, you know, we have to tell the doctors to turn those machines off so that he can pass on in peace. And the following morning, we got a call from the doctor that, in fact, he had passed on. And in our tradition, the tradition is to bury somebody quickly. So the following day, we took a flight up to Valhalla, New York, which is where his plot was. Sort of a strange name, considering Valhalla is sort of a Germanic kingdom filled with Jewish cemeteries. But that was just the way it was, and somehow I didn't remember that much about that final flight. Thank you very much.